Welcome to Candy Wears Many Hats. This is a YouTube channel dedicated to people who, like me, wear so many hats and good hats in terms of the things and activities that they get involved in. So if you're like me and there are many activities you get involved in, and not just poorly, but very well, then come join me. This is what I've got to say. Thanks for tuning in. It's nice to see you again. So I posted on LinkedIn about my child's nursery burning down, and I put on there that I do a YouTube video to explain what happened and how I coped with it. So this is that video. If I haven't introduced myself before, I'm Candice. I'm a business continuity practitioner, but more importantly, a wife and a mum. So basically, I was driving to nursery with my child. She's 2 years old. It was going to be a great day. I had loads of work planned. And as we pulled up there, fire engines were out. And I was like, oh, nice. I used to do a bit of emergency planning. So I love a little fire brigade action. Except it was at my nursery where I was about to turn in. And they've blocked the road off. And I was like, oh, wonder what's happened there. And I look up the roads and the whole building is completely ablaze. And you know when you just get that feeling of, shit. And that's what I just thought. I just thought, shit, how inconvenient. So I actually turned into the car park of a building next to it, and just had a moment of being like, right, what do I do now? Because typically my routine would be drop the child at nursery, come home, log into my computer, do my life, get started for my work day. And it was getting to sort of 8:15, and I was like, right, who do I turn to? So for context, I don't live near my parents. So my dad's passed away already, but I don't live near my mum. I don't live near my sister. They all live up in Derbyshire, so 4 or 5 hours drive from where I live. Don't live near my in-laws. I've done that typical young people thing of moving to an area with no family and being absolutely fine, and then having a child and being like, oh, it really takes community, doesn't it? And I don't have one. But what I do have is a really supportive boss. So firstly, I rang my husband because when I was in a bad mood and a bit stressed, it always turns to people close around you who can listen to you have a big stress and help bring you down. So I rang my husband and I was like, this horrible situation has just happened. I've still got the little baby in the car, so I can't have a big screamy, sweary complain about it, which is my usual way of talking about things. So I was just like, right, what do I do now? So obviously spoke to the husband on the drive home and was like, right, this has happened. I know, going into that business continuity crisis management mind, that I'm going to need help for the rest of the week. So I basically just said to him, please consider coming home, because he works away from home. So I'm single married parenting. So he works in Wales. And I was just like, right, can you consider coming home? Because when I actually start thinking about what I need to do, I know I'm going to need that support. So I made that call on the way home. I got home, took the child out of the car. She was really confused. Luckily, she hadn't seen the kind of building. She's very smart, so she would have worked out what it was. She hadn't seen the building, but we'd sung on the way there. She knew she was going to nursery, and suddenly she's home. So she's a bit like, Mummy, what's going on? Like, this is different. And I just told her we were having a girly day, which she was excited about. She loves to traumatise my day with loads of bluey and stuff. So I was like, great. So I got in, settled the child down, got her slide, she got some activities like she'd usually have on a day home with Mummy. And then I basically rang my boss. Now, it's fantastic to be able to have a boss or a manager who you trust, who you really believe understands you. Like, it was so important for me when I chose the job I have to work for someone who's also a mum, and a great mum at that. So I rang her and I was like, listen, this has just happened. And she was just like, I mean, any parent, any working parent can imagine the stress of your child's nursery burning down. It's not a joy. So she was just like, do you want to take the day? And I was like, do you know what? Yeah, I do want to take the day, because even though I feel like the child can calm down and this type of stuff and do work, I was like, right, I need just to take the day to be able to sort out what's going on. Obviously, I hadn't spoken to the nursery yet or anything like that to see what was going on. I hadn't spoken to any other mums in the mums groups that I'm part of. I was just like, for me, let's just take the day and then we'll see what comes in terms of information. So I was chilling with the child. I shot off those, you know, texts to the in-laws, to my mum, to see, you know, what they were up to that week. Just a little feeler before I found out something formal, just to work out my personal resilience and then those closest around me. So previously, so during my probation period at work, which has been recently because I've only been working there like a couple of months, well, not a couple of months, like 9 months or so. So previously, because I had to come in to work for 9 o'clock, I was really struggling with it. So what would happen is I'd send the child to the in-laws for a week. It would be like half terms and this sort of stuff. And I'd come to work every day, 9 o'clock, stay late and get my kind of 8 mandatory hours in. 8 mandatory hours, I would love that. 8 mandatory days in as part of a time period where the child could be away, just to make sure I'm there on time, etc. After my probation, time's a little bit more flexible. I can stay a bit later on some days, a bit earlier. There's just a lot more flexibility. So the in-laws weren't surprised by this request. They were like, oh no, this is terrible. But one of the things that, like, the reason why I connected with my family is because this was a newsworthy item. You know, this is a child's nursery burning down. Like, this is going to make like local news at least, maybe national. So it's great. So my family has a lot of anxiety. So when I messaged my mum, I was like, started the message with, everything's fine. But if you've seen the news, the child's nursery has burnt down. She will be okay. So it was fantastic to be able to communicate that and then not have that kind of worry. I did that straight away because, you know, when you've got family who know where you go, when your child goes to nursery, and when it pops up on their news feed or on the radio, you know, it can be very stressful. So I realised that, you know, I could send the child away if I had to. There was nothing on that week work-wise that was so particularly important. I was going to die. So I was like, right, we'll see what can go on. So it was at that point I was like, right, got my personal resilience sorted. So got my family sorted, got my husband coming home, got potential arrangements with with the extended family who might come down, or I send the child to them. What's the next? Let's find out about the local area. So I went on my mum's WhatsApp groups. Always so important to build these relationships with things like this. And basically they were just like, this is awful. People would set up GoFundMes. The mums were active. We were talking about, I live in a very middle class area, let's say. It's a very expensive nursery. Everyone loves it. But you've got a lot of mums who are sending their child there who maybe don't work and this sort of stuff. And a lot of energy thrown into this. And this is a prominent nursery in this area. It's been there greater than 20 years. It's, you know, it's decades of children raised there. So you've got adults living in that region whose children go to that nursery now. So it's a really popular nursery. And it was great because people communicating, their mums were communicating, they were just letting people know who hadn't dropped their children off. They were, you know, kids who didn't attend on the day that we were going in were then informed. But then I was like, what's the nurse's communication? And I only had to wait like 20 minutes before we start getting those messages through and the phone calls of, yep, this has happened. And it was really interesting. When I joined the nursery, you know, wanted to go there, one thing that was really important for me is to find out their alternate sites. So this nursery operates at multiple sites. And it was one of those things where I asked them when I joined the nursery, do you have a business continuity plan? You know, I'm a professional, you know, just because I like to get that information. And they did say that they have arrangements in place. So I was like, wonderful. This was the time to see the arrangements. So what they did is they have another site about 20 minutes away from where I live. And what they said is they were sending out a list of children who could attend that site for the rest of the week. So the next day, so today, write off. The next day, they would have my child able to go to the site 20 minutes away for the rest of the week and then ongoing until they got the insurance details, got the information. I was like, all right, I've seen businesses do worse. I've seen professional organisations with ISO alignment and certification do worse than that. So yeah, I was really privileged because I found out on that day that my child would be able to go to a nursery in proximity, so it's not too bad there. Wonderful, excellent. So I rang my boss and was like, sorted for the rest of the week. And she was like, okay, are you still going to be able to come into work? And then I was like, yes. Let me do the maths on that. I will come back to you. I said, pause on that. And I had a look, and luckily, blessings from God, like I was so lucky for this, is the nursery was actually on the same train line into going to work. I mean, the timings were tight, but I still would be able to get a train, but I would always arrive at work later than I usually would, so about 45 minutes later. I messaged the boss and was like, listen, this is going to be probably the short-term, medium-term solution. You happy for me arriving a little bit later? I'm happy to come in an extra day if it's about hours in the office rather than days. And we arranged that between ourselves and managed to sort that in a way that was kind of appropriate to the business. Yeah, so then we just had that emotional bit of trying to explain to the child that we're not going to be going to the same building anymore. And this was really difficult because I chose the nursery based on the fact that it had like wild horses and like all this fun stuff, and you know, it was beautiful, and the kids outdoors areas were really great. And now I'd be explaining to Jess that we're going to a brand new setting. Now, I have anxiety and panic disorder, and the child does not, so we can imagine the problem is more on my side than the child's. But I was well versed in the fact that I know that things change, and like this is the new thing that's going to be happening for the future. So on day one, so this was the next day, I took the child to the nursery, and we had a kind of like softer morning than usual. Usually I'd be thrown her in the shower, you know, all this type of stuff. A softer morning, more gentle approach. We had her favourite songs in the car. We had a teddy with her, just in case she got a bit overwhelmed. She was at this time still on dummies, so she was having a great time. We got to the new building, and I went in with her and stayed with her for a little bit, just until she was kind of settled. But one thing that's I think is fantastic about my child, and probably a lot of other children, is they are the most resilient. As soon as they see food and a couple of friends that they like, absolutely fine. So it was fantastic because she was right in there, like back to everything, playing. And I was apprehensive when I left and stayed in the car for a little bit and had my phone on all day just in case like something happened. But when I went back to pick her up, and I'd looked on the app to see she'd had a good day, when I went back to pick her up, she was chill. Wasn't stressed in the slightest, and I realised that I was carrying more of this emotional labour. Maybe she didn't understand what had happened, so she thought this was temporary, but she was fine. And it persisted over weeks. She just didn't ask me any questions about it. It was only this new journey that she was confused why we were taking so long to get to nursery, but she didn't really recognise nursery as the building, she recognised it as the people, which was kind of like a really lovely way to kind of be like, you've lost the building, you've not lost that community. So it was great. There was a little bit of challenge though, is that some kids couldn't get into this new setting. It was now too far away for them to go to nursery. So you did have that thing of, okay, some of her friends aren't attending anymore, like, and then it's my role as like the kind of parent to pick up that gap. Do we see that child outside of nursery now? And like, is it a person that Jess sometimes misses? And we have that conversation with her of, you know, sometimes we don't see the same people all the time. So it was great. It was a really good thing to kind of do, and it really showed me that maybe I'm a bit too soft when it comes to the baby, and and things can be different in the future. She's a lot more resilient than I give her credit for. So yeah, so this was a really strange experience, difficult, but I have to say that first week was doable just because of the speedy recovery of that nursery. And they were fantastic. They had a mass comms team and a media team who was like, you know, working with the police and like working with the local authorities and all this type of stuff. The messages all over local communities. Other nurseries were contacting parents and saying, you know, we have a space for your child in our local area. So actually the whole community kind of pulled together, and it was really lovely to see that. You don't really find this when you like work in business, that other businesses are, from a nice perspective, wanting to support, you know, they're always willing to poach your customers, etc. But it was nice knowing that in this like more family-centric kind of community, nursery, that, you know, other areas were coming out to bat and support at discounts as well, which is nice. So yes, it was really good, and I think it's a huge testament to the nursery for how well they managed to kind of recover and organise things and stuff. And like, even to now, so it was like a month after it happened that they've opened some temporary sites at the location where it was before, so that parents who were waiting for locations or didn't want to leave this nursery because they like the way it's managed now can access that closer building. I mean, for my child, she's going to go to a different site until the building's rebuilt. But yeah, it's just really good that they thought of loads of different methodologies and loads of different things that could affect people's choices when it comes to making decisions about nurseries. So yeah, so it's been an interesting experience for me, but it really did challenge that perception of, I could be a really rigid and like strict practitioner who's really into the detail for my ISO certification and standards. And that's what it takes to be a business continuity practitioner and want to be the best at it. But yeah, I do understand that I am very close-minded when it comes to the fact that I don't put the same level of energy into my personal life as I do my professional. Like when I book a holiday, I've booked mystery holidays where I do none of the planning and just send someone my money and they organise me a holiday. I'd never do that for work. And it's very much trying to understand for myself that I have a different mentality at work as in my personal life. And that's why, I've been really passionate about doing this YouTube channel. It's trying to bring those two things together and work out like, what is the trigger for me taking something seriously and putting on the Candice at work hat? When doing something, is it emotional vulnerability or is it, the opposite? Like, can I only get involved in things that I don't feel emotions about? So yeah, so it's been really interesting, but it's been a good opportunity for me to kind of learn and really open my eyes up to the fact that I can learn from non-practitioners. So in future, I will hopefully be doing a really exciting session, which I'll put on YouTube. I won't spoil it. From a non-practitioner, just about resilience and about some kind of like personal, peoply aspects to that. So hopefully you've enjoyed this and you'll want to watch that when it comes out. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully this has given you a kind of perspective of the fact that you can learn from non-resilience professionals, but also like sharing your stories of how you've overcome like challenging situations and had to like have those different compartmentalized thoughts about the personal aspect, the work aspect, the family aspects, like how that all feeds in. Like sharing that with everyone is really useful. A great way, cathartic for me. I feel great, but also a great way for us to encourage each other to be realistic about the mental gymnastics that goes into being resilient. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. But thanks for tuning in. Cheers. So you've made it to the end of the video. Oh, how exciting! Thanks again for dialing in and joining me on this little exploration journey. I've had fun, of course. That's the whole point. Hopefully you have too. So drop a comment below or send me a message and do connect with me on my socials. I'm doing a lot on LinkedIn all the time. So send me a message. All my socials are in the description below. But thanks for dialing in. Cheers. Bye.